We see the signs of the times starting to rapidly progress, and there is no doubt that Jesus is going to come back. What were some of the things that Jesus said would happen before his return? Are we starting to see those things happen before our eyes? All and more in Revelation in the News.
Hello, I'm Ricky Baker, and this is Revelation in the News. First and foremost, I just want to go ahead and thank you to everyone who watches Revelation in the News faithfully every single week. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't come here every single week and bring you this broadcast. We have some crazy news stories that we want to go over today, and one actually shocked me in particular. James, what's that news story?
A Canadian terrorist who spent 10 years at Guantanamo Bay is getting more than $10 million in an apology from the Canadian government, according to CNN. Cotter sued the Canadian government, saying that Canada violated international law by not protecting him as a citizen and conspiring with his U.S. captors. In a 2010 plea deal with the U.S. prosecutor, Cotter admitted to throwing a grenade during a 2002 firefight in Afghanistan that killed a member of the U.S. military and partially blinded U.S. Sergeant Lane Morris.
I don't think there's any evidence that most Canadians agree with this or are for it at all. Is that your sense?
It is, and you know, and that makes perfect sense. I don't think you've got to be Canadian or American to say, right, okay, there's a guy out there who killed the U.S. soldier, and now you're going to give him $10.5 million because he was lonely at Guantanamo, or he didn't have a shoulder to cry on. It's just, you just, how that balances out as justice is just beyond me and obviously Canadians. I think I've seen polls that 71% of Canadians are outraged by this action.
It's the definition of decadence.
Wow, that is a crazy news story. James, could you tell us the legal significance about this?
Well, the legal significance of this is that in the Geneva Conventions, which is war law, civilians and terrorists, if you say, or combatants are treated differently, and they go to different courts. Well, Cotter was sent to a military court, and this military court saw him as, well, what it was, a terrorist act against U.S. soldiers. And so what the real problem is how we treat the situation and how we treat these organizations or these terrorist cells. Whenever a civilian or just a regular soldier is violent towards U.S. military, you must treat it as a terrorist act. But in this situation, it was confused.
There's one thing we all need to be concerned with is what's going to happen to this money. That's $8 million U.S. dollars, 10.5 if you're from Canada, and that's a lot of money to be giving somebody who has a known past of terrorism. His family's linked to terrorism. Mm-hmm. His father was the lead financier for the Taliban in Afghanistan, and that's why they were there.
Well, originally, I mean, when they were roasting him there, he said straight out that he did it, that he threw the grenade. Mm-hmm. He admitted it. Mm-hmm. He admitted the plea guilty. He pleaded guilty. He said he threw the grenade. So, and then he retracts that thought. So the thing is if he said or outright said it, his family is a known Al-Qaeda ties. Mm-hmm. What's going on? Why do we question?
Well, something else that I got out of this story that I found very impactful and appalling is the fact that he went on TV and he was under recording saying that, you know, people can't forget my past. People, it's the thing that keeps following me that I did this act, and it's making it incredibly difficult for me to get a job. I'm like, well, you're involved, your whole family's been involved in something that the whole world is appalled by. Mm-hmm. Nobody in this world accepts your act or your group's act of radical Islam, you know?
We actually have a video of Sergeant Lane Morris saying what occurred on the battlefield.
Tell us, if you would, and if it's too painful, don't, but about the day that all of this happened.
No, I don't. I have no problem talking about it, Tucker. We were after Omar Kadar's father, who was bin Laden's finance guy. The isolated compound we went to, His father was gone. Omar was there with 4 or 5 other guys. We surrounded that compound, myself and 4 other soldiers. We waited for 45 minutes. They wouldn't come out and talk to us. When we finally got the rest of my team there, as well as some Afghans that we were working with, when our interpreters went in to try and make contact, the guys inside that compound just popped up over a low rise inside the compound and executed them point blank, threw hand grenades at the rest of us. We shot 2 or 3 of them right there at the gate, and as the others ran to the back of the compound, throwing hand grenades as they went, I popped up to shoot a couple of guys with my rifle. It's got a 203, the grenade launcher on the bottom. And as I pulled the trigger on that grenade launcher, I felt something smack me in the right eye. Turns out a hand grenade they'd thrown I hadn't seen went off, and a piece of shrapnel hit me in the right eye.
What's really unfortunate about this story is that, yes, there may have been legal loopholes here, but bottom line is, here was a terrorist who killed an American citizen and halfway blinded another, and he was let off for this and also given $8 or $10 million for this. And I think that just sets a really, unfortunate precedent.
John, you have a news story on a different topic about Hillary Clinton. Will you share that with us?
Yeah, thanks, Ricky. A matter of fact, a speech by former President Bill Clinton made in Russia is coming back to haunt the Clintons, and maybe connected to the Russians' lawyer who contacted Donald Trump Jr., according to Fox News. $500,000 speech in Moscow coincided with Hillary Clinton's opposition of Russia's sanctions targeting human rights abusers while she was Secretary of State. Now, however, the company that paid Bill Clinton was tied to the human rights sanctions that Hillary Clinton opposed.
You know what I find so funny is the double standard on the left, that we're accusing the Trump family of something that the Clintons have been doing for years.
That's right. And one thing I find very, very interesting about this is I honestly feel like Donald Trump and his team knows exactly where people are going to go. It's, like Mark Taylor said, the media is not going to be able to resist anything that Trump does or says or, his actions. So, his family can go meet with somebody, and he knows in that meeting, the media is going to be attracted to that and want to know what that meeting was about. And this meeting with this Russian lawyer, Natalia, and so they're wondering why Donald Trump Jr. was asking the question, do you have any dirt on Miss Hillary Clinton? And, I think that's it. I think that's the dirt, is they just found out that they were colluding with Russia right there.
Mm-hmm. And that Russian attorney is actually going to appear before the Senate panel pretty soon. Isn't that right?
Yeah, next week. So if I would be watching to see what comes out of that meeting, because I think there's going to be some interesting information that comes out of that. And a matter of fact, this is all kind of surrounding the Majinsky Act. And a matter of fact, the guy who brought it up, and he was hired, and then when he found it, he told the government, and the government had him killed. So in 2012, the administration finally backed the sanctions against Russia. And when they did that, Russia retaliated and said, well, fine, Americans cannot adopt Russian kids.
Wow.
So there's definitely something going on there.
And that's one of the issues that President Trump was addressing while he was in Russia the other week.
Yeah, he sure was.
We see so many crazy things happening, not only throughout our nation, but throughout the world and throughout our religions, our Christianity. And we see, on a different topic, our Christianity is being persecuted. We're being mocked. We're being belittled. People of faith aren't, quote unquote, fit to run for offices and are in government positions, which is absolutely crazy because this country was founded on those Christian values. Greg Laurie said we're rapidly approaching a John 15:20 tipping point. Cora, what does John 15:20 say?
John 15:20 says, remember the word that I said to you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will keep yours also.
Greg Laurie also said in an interview, he said, in a way, persecution will separate the genuine from the fake. If you're a true follower of Jesus, you won't back down if a little persecution comes your way. Laurie says, if God allows it in your life, he will give you the strength to face it.
I absolutely love that because it is so true. You see throughout the entire Bible, throughout this entire book, you see that happen. There's going to be persecution. There's trials. There's things that come your way that aren't comfortable and aren't not good in your eyes. But at the end of the day, we always get the victory because we serve the victor. Jesus came down and died on the cross so we could claim that victory. And I love it because it's not just after Jesus died on the cross that we claim that victory. You see, even in the Old Testament, God coming and fighting because he is a just God. In Matthew 5:10, Jesus says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." If this is a sales pitch for Christianity, it's not a very good one. But Jesus isn't making a sales pitch in this beatitude. He's offering a word of comfort to the disciples who will be persecuted because of him. He knows that no one, at least no normal person, likes to be persecuted. Jesus says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted," in verse 10. And then in verse 11, he says, "Blessed are you." To those who are already suffering persecution, Jesus says, "Don't be discouraged." And to those who have yet to face persecution, he says, "Don't be surprised." In saying this, Jesus serves notice to his disciples. Those who follow him faithfully should expect to experience a measure of rejection. Notice that Jesus doesn't say, Blessed are you if people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evils against you. He says, "Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you." We have to realize that persecution is going to come. It's one of the things that has to happen before Jesus returns. We will be hated for his name's sake, but do not fret. Don't be scared because of that. That's a time to rejoice because we know we already have the victory.
You know, that reminds me of something that Pastor Jim always says. You know, watch for the signs of the end times. And I believe that this is truly a sign of the end times. And we talk about it all the time. We talk about it in the JBS show and all, that we're going to be persecuted, that things are going to be happening. And we see it in the news. You know, crosses are being taken down. Our perspective, our religious beliefs won't be respected like they used to be. But the Bible even says that a righteous man falls down 7 times and he gets back up. And I think that goes to say for people who get discouraged, that don't just stay down, you know, stand up. God says he will give you the strength, which Ricky was just saying, Absolutely. That God will give you the strength. And we need to remember that, and we need to ask for that. We need to pray for that.
And the thing is, we're talking about the persecution here in America because we see our brothers and sisters already in the Middle East being crucified on crosses and being burned alive because of their faith. So they're already seeing that persecution. Just because it hasn't happened here in America does not mean it's going to happen. So it's not a time to just sit back and kick your feet up and think everything's going to be fine and dandy, because that's not what's going to happen. That's whenever you'll be surprised that persecution comes. And Jesus clearly says, don't let that kind of thing surprise you.
Well, you know, that reminds me of what they say about spiritual warfare. That, you know, when you have more spiritual warfare, when you're being persecuted for doing the Lord's work, that usually means you're doing something right, especially in these last days where we're seeing that, you know, good things are being hated, you know, kind of the opposite. You know, that usually means you're doing the right thing when not everyone is going along with you.
Absolutely. Listen, this is the time to rejoice. This is a time to prepare. We are getting this season to be able to prepare. If you're not prepared spiritually, make sure to do that. If you're not prepared physically, make sure to do that. You can go to our mother show, which is the Jim Bakker Show. Check out all the things they have, but get plugged into a church. If you look at all these things happening and you see the world rapidly coming to the point where Jesus is going to return and it kind of scares you a little bit, get plugged into a good Bible-believing church and allow them to explain the process, because it is a beautiful thing that our Lord Jesus Christ is coming back. This is truly what we live for, to see this thing, and to think that we're the generation that gets to see Christ return is such a powerful thing.
And as what Ricky was saying, it's, you know, we are given the fear of the Lord, but that does not mean that we need to be afraid of what's going on, because God is in control, and we need to remember that he wins in the end. So this is not a reason to fear at all. This is a reason to prepare and to get our hearts right with God.
You know, as we're closing the show today, I just want to remind everybody, like you were saying, to check out the PTL network. There's tons of great shows and things that you can check out that will inspire and uplift you. So take a moment today and go check it out on the Jim Bakker Show or on Roku, wherever you're at.
Absolutely. Until next time, this is Revelation in the News. Thank you for tuning in.